Shrek 5. One day, my sweet prince, one day. But since we've had little to no information about this fifth installment and or entire series reboot, it depends where you get your information from, and the last proper Shrek movie was a whole 13 years ago, pretty much everything about this movie is up for speculation. DreamWorks confirmed that the production for a new Shrek movie had started earlier this year, so they haven't totally forgotten about it. That's good, but outside of a couple stray comments, there's next to no info. They haven't even got the original cast signed on yet. That wouldn't stop Hollywood from milking another beloved franchise dry though. Another Shrek movie is coming eventually, for better or worse. In terms of plot details, we have nothing, and that's where I come in. I have some suggestions, DreamWorks. You can take them or leave them. Each Shrekquel so far has predominantly tackled one or two main fairy tale tropes or stories and integrated those characters within the world of Shrek. Shrek 2 gave us the fairy godmother of princesses, Puss in Boots and Prince Charming. For Shrek the Third, it was the characters of Arthurian legend and royal lineage. Shrek Forever After gave us magical deals, an alternate timeline, and Rumpelstiltskin. But for this next Shrekquel, I think it's important to look back. Look way back. To Shrek's roots. Yeah, even before that. I'm talking about Shrek ! This book is the original source material, and despite the ginormous cultural impact of the Shrek franchise, most people watching this video are probably learning about this for the first time right now. Shrek! Is a children's picture book first published in 1990 by William Steig, and it is very different from its animated adaptations. It has some similar story beats and some of the messaging and themes align. Be yourself, haha stinky, subversive fairy tale tropes, Shrek has laser vision, all the classic Shrek stuff. But as you can imagine from some of these images alone, there's a lot that'll be unfamiliar to most Shrek fans. Shrek doesn't look like the towering round ogre in brown and beige. No, our first Shrek was no taller than your average human, covered in spots, a long lump sprouting out the top of his head, hair on his nose and the back of his head, red eyes, wearing a clash of purple and yellow garb. Let's also not ignore Shrek's full-blown superpowers, which include, but are not limited to, fire breath, laser vision, lightning consumption, a tree-bending stench, and a poisonous biology that makes him snake-proof. If Shrek from Shrek and Shrek from Shrek! Had a death battle, it's a no-brainer of who's coming out alive. Book Shrek also never mentions the term ogre at all. He's clearly not human because it is said he is hatched, I assume from an egg, so these two Shreks may as well be completely different species. There's some weird stuff here, but I'm not going to give you a rundown of the whole story. Hopefully the absurdity of the last few statements has hooked you enough to go find it yourself. So how does any of this help with Shrek 5? What I want to look at in this original book is the characters. Let's run down the list of who's who and who doesn't yet have a counterpart in the movies. First, Shrek. Outside of the physical differences, book Shrek is confident, proudly ugly, and a consistently positive guy. Movie Shrek can be sad, lonely, sarcastic, and is clearly not okay with his outcast lifestyle. Book Shrek is also an overt killer, straight up murders people that gets in his way, a book for children. That being said, movie Shrek has definitely killed people too. We don't see him do the deed, but we know there's some human-looking eyeballs in your martini, Shrek. You're not fooling anyone. His donkey, Book Donkey, is just a normal donkey-looking donkey, big enough for Shrek to ride. He can talk, so both iterations have that in common, but like all other characters in Shrek! Excluding Shrek himself, Donkey mostly talks and rhymes. He's hardly a main character though. He appears on 3 pages and speaks on 2. This is our unnamed ugly princess. No Fiona to be seen, as she has no name at all outside of her royal title, and there's basically no resemblance to either of movie Fiona's forms. She's just this pale witch of a thing. Now here we have Dragon. Those are just 2 entirely different creatures. Book Dragon's less of a character too, and more of an obstacle. And unlike the movie, he has 0 interaction with Donkey. Now those characters just mentioned are what we'd consider our main cast of at least the first movie. For the record, Lord Farquaad was never in the book. But after that is when we start looking to new characters for inspiration. In order of appearance, we've got Shrek's parents. Quoting the first line of Shrek, ! His mother was ugly and his father was ugly, but Shrek was uglier than the two of them put together. Shrek was kicked out of home by them, seemingly with a smile on his face, and they're never seen again. In the movies, while we never see Shrek's parents, there is one anecdote of his father that he shared in a genuine heart-to-heart with Arthur.
Even my own dad knew I wasn't worth the trouble. He dumped me at that school the first chance he got, and I never heard from him again.
My dad wasn't really the fatherly type either.
Well, I doubt he was worse than mine.
Oh yeah? My father was an ogre. He tried to eat me. Now, I guess I should have seen it coming. He used to give me a bath in barbecue sauce and put me to bed with an apple in my mouth.
Okay, I guess that's pretty bad.
While I could totally see a scenario where Shrek 5 is about his parents coming back and sticking their business into his normal family lifestyle, shenanigans galore. To me, that seems regressive. We've already seen how Fiona's half of the family interrupted his newly married life. So having a similar situation with his own parents is not something that I'd want to see, especially considering his dad allegedly eats babies. Up next is the witch, or the fortune teller. This one's a little bit more complicated. In an early version of the first Shrek movie, there was going to be a witch-like woman called Dama Fortuna, based off of the witch from Shrek! She was going to be the one responsible for Princess Fiona's curse. However, it was a reverse situation to what we now understand from the first two movies. Fiona, a born ogre, would approach Fortuna in her quest to be beautiful and be given a magic potion. Like the first movie, this would lead to her being able to transform into a human during the daytime while still being an ogre at night, being told she could only become fully human after true love's first kiss. As you probably know, Dama Fortuna was ditched, but parts of those ideas carried over to the final product. Funnily enough, Shrek 2's fairy godmother's canonical name is in fact Dama Fortuna, and she plays a similar role in Fiona's backstory. So while greatly transformed from the original book, the witch is somewhat there. Moving on, there's a random peasant farmer who gets murdered by Shrek for his lunch. We've seen plenty of similar figures in the movie's Angry Mobs, and we know Shrek's killed people, nothing much to gain from this. Shrek has a nightmare where children are hugging, singing, and dancing. There actually is a parallel to this scene in Shrek the Third. You remember that creepy nightmare with all of the ogre babies?
Wake up!
Yeah, so if these imaginary children count as characters, they kind of have representation. There's a knight that is defending a drawbridge before Shrek murks him. We have seen miscellaneous knights before, as well as a pretty prevalent one in Prince Charming. And that's all. Except one. Someone totally ignored by the movies. Steig really left the best till last. 2 words. Alligator priest. He has no lines, one picture, doesn't have a name, and is never even referenced by the narrator. He stands there, officiates Shrek's wedding, and that's it. Hell yeah. Alligator priest. Why is he an alligator? I don't know. Why can Shrek eat lightning from the sky? I don't know, because it's awesome. And William Steig knew it was awesome, so he drew it in a book. Hell yeah, alligator priest. Now, if we're being very charitable, he kind of, sort of, maybe has a parallel in the movie. The bishop who was supposed to marry Lord Farquaad and Princess Fiona before Shrek objected was the same man who ended up marrying Shrek and Fiona. Clearly Shrek's declaration of love in the chapel struck a chord with the bishop to show up at their swamp wedding. Either that or there's not another available officiant in a 100-mile radius. However, as much as this guy did the same job of the alligator priest, by no means is he an alligator priest. He has none of the design, charm, or scales to be on the same level as the OG. Even the Shrek wiki agrees, and I quote, "He's also the one character to not be featured in the film adaptation, or later get representation similar to the fortune teller in the films." They also label him on the wiki as the alligator pastor, not priest, but I think priest sounds cooler, so I'm sticking with that. Point is, this guy has potential, and with that comes an angle into a new Shrekwall. If he shows up, even as a small cameo in the film, then I'll be a very happy man. But here's my proposition.
Okay, fine. Attention all fairy tale things.
The fairy tale method. As previously mentioned, each Shrekwall so far has honed in on subverted portrayals of famous fairy tale stories and characters, predominantly those culturally associated with Disney's adaptations. It could be a small inclusion for a one-off joke, or the main antagonist creating the reason for the story taking place. So how do we incorporate our dear alligator priest into some pre-existing story? Easy. We look for someone with comparable attributes and place our guy in their position. There's a couple of directions this could go. Literally only a couple from what we know about him, either focus on alligator or focus on priest. I chose the reptilian angle, and while I couldn't think of a good alligator for substitution, I found the next closest thing. Enter the crocodile from Peter Pan. The crocodile in the original novel, named Tick-Tock in Disney's animated movie, is Captain Hook's nemesis. After Peter Pan cut off Hook's hand, Pan fed it to the crocodile, and after loving its taste, the crocodile has followed Hook since, consistently haunting him and attempting to eat him. Somewhere along the way, it also ate a clock, so there's a consistent ticking sound coming from its stomach. You know when it gets near. Now, I do intend to make our new crocodile/alligator a villain in our story, and I'll connect the dots soon, but he won't be the main one. No, I think the best villain for the Shrekule would be none other than the main character of the crocodile story, Peter Pan. We've already seen Pan in the world of Shrek once, and he was far from a good guy then. It's at the start of the original Shrek movie where we first meet Donkey, being sold alongside other magical creatures. And wouldn't you know it, there's a little Peter Pan selling who we can only assume is Tinkerbell. Even though she wasn't the nicest of people at times, selling your friend into slavery is all sorts of bad. Side note, you could totally redo this design for Pan. Here he looks more like an annoying 10-year-old than a devious antagonist. Plus, you already gave Rumpelstiltskin an overhaul in design for his big movie, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So, here's the plot. This would be set many years in the future, at least to the point where Shrek's triplets, Fergus, Farkle, and Felicia, are at least, 8 years old. It's a big time gap for the franchise, but I think it's needed for this story specifically. So one night, the triplets get a visit from Peter Pan. We get a similar runaway shadow situation to the Disney movie, but with none of them having good enough sewing skills, Pan can't sew his shadow back on. Eventually, Pan wins the children over, and with the power of fairy dust and good memories, they all fly off to Neverland. Shrek and Fiona wake to find that their children have been kidnapped, but find Pan's shadow hiding in the triplets' room. After they all finish freaking out, the non-speaking shadow is able to visually communicate to Shrek and Fiona that they need to find Captain Hook. The last time we saw Hook in a Shrek movie was at the end of Shrek the Third. Arthur finished his big speech to all the villains about how they could just not be villains or something like that. Anyway, we get this line from Hook.
I grow daffodils, and they're beautiful.
So we lean all in on that. He's not at sea, he's in the middle of some nice village tending to a personal flower garden. But Shrek doesn't know this. Shrek, Fiona, Shadow, and probably Donkey, let's be honest, all show up, ready for a violent confrontation, thinking Hook's the one responsible for their missing kids. But Shadow knows better. And between his attempts at de-escalation and Captain Hook's pleading, everyone settles down. Hook is able to explain his backstory with Pan and the kind of monster he is. Now, to be honest, we really don't have to stray too far from the source material to make Peter Pan look like a bad guy. Disney, of all people, have done two villainous interpretations already. First in the Once Upon a Time series, and more recently in 2022's Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Looking at the source material, he's an immortal, magical forever child who kidnaps children, bringing them to a dangerous magical land. Due to Neverland's curse, the longer you stay there, the more you forget about the outside world, and the children inevitably join the Lost Boys. Back to the story, when talking with Hook, Shrek would learn this, and at the end of Hook's exposition, he holds his missing hand. Now with a trowel instead of Hook. Donkey or someone would notice this and go, "Is that how you lost your hand?" And before Hook can explain, there's a ticking sound coming from outside. Hook is scared and hides out back, while the rest watch as the front door opens, and our alligator priest is revealed. He comes in with a ticking clock pendant on a chain around his neck, over his very fine robes, with a personality not dissimilar to Smee, but Shadow knows better. Once our alligator gets a whiff of the house, he politely asks where Hook is. He says, "I couldn't possibly leave with unfinished business." When Hook is seen failing to sneak out back, the charm and wit is dropped, stating, "I need to finish this off. I need to. I haven't finished my meal." And the priest then goes full savage animal. For the following action scene, he will be fending off everyone, but specifically hunting Hook. Also, the alligator priest is more of a crocodile mage. He would be dominant in the fight, throwing people around with forceful magic. I think his magic would look and perform similar to fairy magic, but in a corrupted way. The fight should end with some serious consequences, and one of our main characters, probably Shrek, should lose a finger or hand in the same way that Hook did. This means that our crocodile mage is not only going after Hook, who, let's face it, is significantly more expendable, and could be killed off almost whenever during the story, but also a leading character who we know the audience is invested in is now under that known threat. The party is able to escape the crocodile, but are now tasked with getting to Neverland. Hook informs them of the crocodile's own curse, that once he starts eating a creature, he is magically bound to finish the job. Hook also shares that Neverland is an island, and you'll need a ship to get there. However, since his change of lifestyle, he no longer has one available. However, guess who just stole a ship in the final scene of their own movie? Here comes Puss in Boots with Team Friendship. So that's most of what I've thought. The ending, I've got a vague idea of what I want, but why spoil the ending for you? When DreamWorks inevitably hires me, then you'll wish I kept my mouth shut. I do have decent ideas for about how a few other scenes go though. At some point, I want Shrek's party to be all pirated out, fighting from their ship, with the Lost Boys playing beach tower defense before them, and our persistent crocodile trailing behind the ship. I think it'd be interesting for Shrek and Fiona as parents to have to fight for their own children, but also having to avoid hurting other wild children who are not of sound mind, and as a result, clearly want to hurt them back. Additionally, in between the events of Shrek's group, I also want to see scenes of Peter Pan's interactions with Fergus, Farkle, and Felicia. That way we can see slowly Pan's more malicious intent come out, but also get to see the personalities of the triplets. As of Shrek 4, they're just infant props, so we definitely need to expand on who they are and their differences. We could also get a scene at the start of the movie where Shrek's having an argument with one or multiple triplets, so they split ways on bad terms. This gives Pan something to exploit while trying to get them to go and stay in Neverland, but it also gives Shrek the guilt that the last thing they talked about was the catalyst for pushing them away. I'm not exactly sure what the argument should be about, but it should probably be something where Shrek's technically right as a father, but he just goes about it the wrong way. That's pretty much it. I came up with some other ideas for Shrekable plots. It's unlikely, but I might explore those ideas in a future video. The really easy answer for the alligator priest is to just make him the officiant of Puss and Kitty's wedding in Puss in Boots 3, whenever that happens. That works too, still making homage to the franchise's roots without him being super essential to the plot. I just happen to like my Peter Pan idea a little bit more. But until then, alligator priest for Shrek 5. DreamWorks, call me.
Where is the Shrek 5 trailer? Put it in my mouth. Where is Fergus, Farkle, and Felicia? Do Donkey and the Dragon still bow?